I can't say if he's going to be likely to bluff shove the river or not, but I think that you can still call the turn there, and he'll let you show down enough, and you do have a fair bit of outs anyways. And he does check, and I'm happy to check back, and unfortunately he had ace queen there. Again, a situation in which his hand kind of justifies my turn call, because I think if he's betting ace queen there, he'll end up betting a fair bit of worse aces also for value, and if he's betting worse aces, I'm very happy. Because he'll let me show down, obviously, when neither of us improve a fair bit, and also if we both hit an ace, I'll be able to get a fair bit of money out of him, most likely. So I asked him to split the table, because I would prefer to be playing 2 tables against him, but he doesn't really feel like it, I guess. And top right table is the hand I've been talking about a few in the past couple of videos, and we do end up getting our stacks in, so spoiler. We'll see how it develops, I guess. If he, well, I know what he does. He bets the flop, of course, which I would expect him to do like 90% of the time. And I decide to raise him. With 100 big blinds, I'd probably just flat and then think that if he's got a made hand, I'm going to be able to get my stack in regardless of what happens, and same logic as pocket fours. I don't lose value against his made hands, but gain a lot of equity against his bluffs. But with 350 big blinds, that's not as true. Firstly, you're not necessarily able to get your stack in against his bluffs by just flatting. In fact, you're almost certainly not able to. If I flat and then raise the turn, I think that looks very strong, and I don't think he'll decide to screw around with his air too often if I do that. So I think against his air, really the only way to get your stack in is by raising. And against his made hands, same thing. If you flat and raise a turn, firstly, there are going to be a lot of turn cards that might kill your action against, if he's got like pocket nines, ton of turn cards that he won't end up committing his entire stack with the pocket nines. But if you raise him on the flop, he's liable to 3-bet you or just call and have a much bigger pot, and therefore have more trouble getting away from his hand on turn cards. So basically, I think that with such deep stacks, you do want to be raising the flop to make sure that you are able to get your stacks in against his made hands. And also, even if I knew he had air, I would probably want to raise the flop against a player like this, because I think he is so liable to end up pulling a very big bluff when you decide to raise him on the flop, especially a dry paired board like this where it looks suspicious. Whereas if you just flat, it's going to be difficult to get, definitely it's going to be difficult to get his whole stack, and it's going to be difficult to get a large portion of his stack when he's got air. So I think the clear play is to raise. And reasonably, or I guess that's kind of large. I think it's okay. We are super deep, so you kind of do want to raise a bit bigger. I can't really calculate in my head how big I'd have to raise to set up a comfortable bet on turn and river to get stacks in, but probably around 43, 44, maybe 45. On the bottom left, he's starting to 3-bet about 21%, so he is 3-betting a fair bit, and I don't know what's going on here. My cursor's loading something, whatever. One thing to note is that he's only c-betting $10 into 18, which is a tendency that you'll find that is usually common among better players, that they're going to be c-betting small in 3-bet pots, so you can use that as an indication of the skill level of your opponent a lot of the times. And he's been doing this as his standard, so I'm not going to be able to read in too much from it. And I think it's an okay spot to just put in a small raise on the bottom left table. I think he can fold enough of the time. He's fairly straightforward. I mean, if he's got complete air, it's going to be difficult for him to do much against, if I raise to like 24. Not many people are going to decide to screw around when they've got like 6-7 suited or something on this board. And also I think he's liable to check his ace highs here, so when he's betting here, and also I think a straightforward opponent like him is liable to be pot controlling like pocket tens, pocket jacks and stuff, so his betting range is kind of polarized, and that would make it more profitable to be bluff raising. On the top right, he 3-bets me to pot, and I think you can go both. No, I don't think you can go both ways. You just want to flat here, actually, because even though it looks super strong, and it just seems absurd for him to decide to put in more money with his air after you flat the flop here, I think it's still a very decent possibility against a player like this. And with only pretty much if I called 100, he's going to have 200 left into a $300 pot. I don't think any turn card will kill my action against his value betting hands. So it's a very easy way of breaking down decisions, but I think it's one of the best ways to do it in a lot of situations, and especially when you're multi-tabling and you kind of have to use, I guess, these shortcuts. Just thinking in terms of how likely is he to have a value betting hand, how likely is he to have air, and what are the plays that I want to be making against those two hand ranges. Against his value betting hands, I don't think I'm losing any value regardless of what I do. But against his air, obviously if I shove or re-raise small, I don't think, I mean, it's possible he'll decide to like 5-bet me or something, but I think against his air, the clear-cut play is to call. So based on that line of reasoning, just want to be calling. And on the bottom left, I do raise him, just reasonably small, doesn't have to be very large. Turn card on the top right doesn't matter. I mean, if he has pocket kings, nice hand. And he does shove, luckily, obviously, very happy getting it in. Shows up with ace-6 somehow. So we see that he is willing to run a huge bluff in pretty terrible spot. I mean, once I flat that flop, it's really absurd to think that shoving that turn is going to be a good idea. Okay, let me rewind the bottom left table because I'm not sure what happened, but there's a big pot and I rivered a straight, so sorry about this. Okay, so I see bet the flop. That's okay if someone's going to be check raising you a lot. It's a hand that you want to start considering to check back because it's too weak to be calling on the check raise, but you feel annoyed about it, which is the same logic as the king 8 open-ended straight draw that I checked back earlier. So he check calls and then leads the turn. I think I like calling the turn there. We've got a lot of money behind, and he's a weaker player, so I think he can, and I can end up getting a fair bit of money on the river, even if the 4 straight is what would complete my straight draw. So even if it would be obvious to a lot of players, I think against a weaker player, you can still end up getting a lot of money in. It's possible you've got the best hand, and I think your queen is live a fair bit also. And having the best hand isn't all that unlikely with queen high there. I think he can definitely have just any kind of 5 or 7 that check called and then is leading, and definitely any hearts that are worse than queen high. On the top left, I wouldn't be bet folding pocket 7s on that flop very often, but I guess that's just an indication of how tight he's been so far. So that I am folding pocket 7s, and I think I remember thinking what a tight fold, but I think that's probably the right fold against him since he has been so tight from what I remember. And so yeah, on the bottom right, I river the straight, even though the flush comes in. Once he checks, it's very unlikely he's got a flush. If he had potted the river, I wouldn't have felt happy, but I would have still called. But yeah, I wouldn't have felt very good about it. But once he checks, I've got the best hand almost always, and just want to bet and hope they get paid off. It is a very scary river, so I'm fine with betting a bit smaller and hoping to get a crying call out of something. And CTS mentioned this in one of his videos, that he likes betting with like a 1s or 2s finishing the bet size when he's value betting, and then finishing with like 8s or 9s on his larger bets. It's tough to say if that actually makes a difference, but I think I probably do end up doing that. And on the top right, I call it 10-8 suited. Obviously, I don't think that's going to be a great call in a vacuum, but I just felt like gambling and gambling for $10. And then I'd rather play with him having a slightly deeper stack anyway, so it's not a big deal if he ends up winning.